Okay, hello everyone. This is Dustin from 0 Second Cooldown, 0secondcooldown.blogspot.com. I'm not here for a gameplay video today to sort of talk about what I'm going to be doing. Last week, well, back at the end of August, I had featured the indie game Shelter by Might and Delight. Did a little half-hour video, uh, put that up on YouTube and the blog. I finished up that very same night, really enjoyed it. So about last week, I reached out to the company, and the lead designer of the game agreed to do an interview with me. So here today to join me for a short little interview, Andreas.
Hi, Dustin.
Nice to, really great to have you. I'm really excited about this. To get a
Thank
response
you.
was
It's
really
great to
great.
be here.
Oh yeah. So I guess I just want to ask first off, Shelter's been out for about like I think 2 weeks now, something like that, on PC.
Yes.
So I'm kind of curious what it's like to see like your final product, especially with you as like the lead designer of the game. Like whether people on Steam or Twitter forums are talking about it. Like how does it sort of feel to know that your finished product is out in the open and hearing and seeing people talk about it and play it?
Well, what can I say? We are obviously, that's how it works, right? You're like constantly updating to read every article or anything written in forums about the game. That's just how it is for yeah, at least 4 weeks after a release like this. I
Oh
mean, we had
wow.
we had a similar thing just after PID, which is only now 11 months ago.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, no, it's great fun to read all the stuff about how people seem to connect emotionally to what's happening in our game Shelter. That's what we worked on to get working, and it seems like we hit a nice spot
Oh,
with most of the people. Obviously, there are negative points as well,
yeah, I
but
mean, I
mostly
definitely
we're
had the
we're
sort
happy.
of reactions that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're at a time in game development, independent developers, like the company you work for, are getting to be really like inventive and creative with how they make a game and how they create like a story and a world. And I mean, I would say that Shelter is no different. I mean, when I had originally heard the concept, I was just sort of like badgers. Like it was. I reacted to it in a kind of confused way, but I also thought the idea was really interesting, and part of that was what really made me want to try it out when it eventually came out. So,
Yeah.
was the gameplay ideas of Shelter of the whole protecting like a family, was that first, or was the story these sort of story and emotional ideas that you wanted to convey? Was that the thing that came up first, and you wanted to build the game around that?
I think that what started it all, it was pretty much also, first off, it was also a reaction to everything that happened after the release of PID,
Okay.
where we felt that we obviously, well, PID was regarded as a pretty hardcore platform and with a quite narrow audience. And when we sat down and started to talk about the new project, it was a lot about trying to find a way to connect with a wider audience.
Okay.
And there was always Johannes came up with the idea. My colleague and creative director on the game came up with the idea of having animals in the game, and then at the same time we knew that we wanted to make something uh, with emotions,
Okay.
and then that mixture of animals and emotions led us to this thing with having an animal mother, which turned out to be a badger mother,
Oh,
taking
okay.
care of her kids basically. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's how it grew.
Okay, so you just sort of built the gameplay of getting the food, sort of fending off, and like leading them around. That sort of just came after.
Yeah, that came afterwards, I would say. We had the animal, we had the mother, we had the children, and that was the basics, the foundation, and out of that, everything else grew. Yeah, I would
Okay.
say.
So I mean, you had just talked about Pit and how you had said it was for a much more narrow audience. I mean, last year you guys released that as you had said, and I've played it, I've enjoyed it. I haven't finished it yet, sadly, but I mean, what I've played of it, I've enjoyed it. But it is obviously vastly different from Shelter, and
Yes.
Pit is the like the much more difficult, like sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say hardcore, but difficult platforming game. Shelter I would say is more of like an adventure game. I mean, it still is a tense game, but not nearly the way that Pit is. And
Mm.
it's sort of like with a slightly looser narrative that sort of turns out on a way that depending on how well you play. So is Shelter the type of game that you guys prefer making at Might and Delight, and that you would gear up towards making experiences like that in the future? Or is it more of a like whatever you guys get the inspiration for is what you would want to work on?
I think we have we have this thing at Night and Light that whatever we kind of like challenging us by making sure that each next project is totally different. So I think I obviously can't tell you much about what's happening at the moment, but I
Okay.
can assure you that the next project will be something completely different
Okay,
again.
I'm
It's
excited for
not
that.
gonna be, and that's Might and Light's thing, I think.
So no more Badgers in the future, or do we still have a chance at that?
Uh, if you regarding like a DLC to Shelter, you
Well,
mean, or
I'm
something?
just sort of like making just like a are we getting like a Badger like first person shooter something like that? Like any?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. No.
Okay. Well, I mean, whatever you guys come out with in the future, I'll definitely be checking it out day one. I really enjoyed Shelter, but so would you say that were there any games that sort of influenced or inspired you as a game designer, whether for Shelter in general or just a particular game that really had like a strong effect on you that you've played in the past?
Um, well, I should be pretty honest. I think that um, I think during the time when we sat around the table and talking about this new game that later turned out to become Shelter, I think we all had played and talked about a lot about Journey.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was basically something that obviously was talked a lot about in the office at the time when Shelter sprung to life.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I mean, I've never
Um,
played Journey, sadly. Were there anything in particular that you guys sort of took from it that you wanted to sort of see realized in Shelter, or was it just sort of like you liked the idea of a more of this experience?
no, I mean, Shelter turned out to be pretty different from Journey, which I'm glad it did. I mean, there was never any. I mean, Might and Light, we would never like copy a game,
Right.
obviously, straight off. But if you asked us for if whether we were inspired, and yeah, Journey was there,
Okay.
definitely. But I think they are very different.
Oh, I mean,
So
I've seen parts of Journey. I mean, I know they're different, but I just meant like, was there any type of gameplay ideas that you sort of took an inspiration from in a way, or was it just the
no,
idea
it's
of an experience that you wanted people to experience something very specific?
yeah, it's mostly about just basically. Now I'm not speaking about the title of the game, which is Journey, but I mean the word journey. I think was something that we wanted to Shelter to be a journey,
Okay.
and an emotional journey, obviously.
Hmm.
Also, but also, I mean, actually a journey of this family through this wild
Yeah.
nature. So that's something that it, that I guess we took with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I might be a bit like early in asking this. Like you said, you can't really talk about what you have in the future, but you just released Shelter on PC platforms. Is that sort of like your plan for the your main platforms in the future? Or I mean, we have a lot of consoles out, like some are coming out within a few months. Or do you guys
Hmm.
like have any interest gearing a game towards an like a console platform as opposed to a PC platform in the future? Or is it just like whatever you can get on is sort of what you would put your game on?
I mean, basically, PID was for all three platforms. And
Right.
with that, I mean PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
Right.
And I think our goal with Shelter was, or what we felt after PID was that we wanted to have create a game that with a shorter development time and also a bit more focus, which led us to only develop it for Steam.
Okay.
Regarding if our third game will go down the same line, it's hard to say at
Okay.
the moment. But there are obviously there is it's more time consuming to release to all platforms, obviously,
Right.
and
And with
that's
the
why.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why Shelter. It was nice to be able to concentrate on Steam only with
Okay.
Shelter.
And I mean,
Um,
with like the previous platforms, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, there were sort of like the I don't know if you guys experienced it, but this is just what I had heard from other developers, like sort of prohibitive costs getting on and patching. So I imagine was that sort of a problem with PID, like those costs on those platforms?
that amongst other, sure, it's very much it's a lot easier to patch for Steam.
Right.
So yeah, of course that definitely is a point
Okay.
to regard. Yeah, but you never know. I wouldn't want to close any doors.
Like if like I mean, just a hypothetical example, Sony, Nintendo offered a chance to get a game onto their platform, like you would just be up for that then, basically?
Oh, yeah, that depends completely, obviously, on what actually is happening. But
Right.
that would definitely not be. I would definitely not say that we would say no.
Okay, so no, just pure PC exclusivity in the future, in theory.
In theory.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, to continue on like the idea, so a lot of indie developers have started to use Kickstarter to really great success. I mean, last year, Double Fine Adventure, huge, and a lot of other developers been using that too to help sort of get their projects along
Mhm.
the way. Is Might and Delight? Have you guys ever considered Kickstarter for a future project and like a way to help out with game development?
That would definitely be something we would be able to discuss for sure for future projects. That's not a definitely, yeah.
Okay, just is that like all that really there is to say about it? Just a maybe.
Yeah, because we have hardly started to we're still in the we're still into the whole Shelter thing at the moment, and
Okay,
we haven't
the
really started.
smaller, like easier to manage
Yeah,
game.
we
Okay,
haven't really started to think exactly about what the new project is going to be, and that's why it's hard to say that, yeah, we're going for Kickstarter. But Kickstarter has been discussed for sure. Yeah, in the
okay.
office.
So I mean, to get back onto Shelter, like I had told in the email that I had sent, it was a game that for me it really evoked a ton of emotions, especially at the end of the game. I ended up
Yeah.
at the very last stretch. I lost three of my Badger Cubs, which was this was one of the this is the only probably the only game where I have shouted not out of like anger but out of distress. I'll say that first off.
That's great to
And
hear.
seeing the ending just sort of made me like I just sort of sat back, just sort of silent for a moment, and was just like, wow, like this, everything sort of came full circle in a way. And so you had said, so basically the idea of experiencing like these really strong emotions, like that was what you sort of hoped to get out of for the game, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was.
Maybe not like as strong of the emotions as I had experienced, but just to that effect.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I'm happy to hear you were screaming towards the screen.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was that Hawk is just that was not. I hate Hawks now because of that game. I have to say. But I'm also kind of interested to sort of hearing about the ideas behind each of the areas that you guys had created for the game, because I
Mm.
think there was five areas, like five different sort of levels, you would say,
High level. Yeah.
and each one sort of had a really distinct theme to
Mhm.
them. Was that just sort of you wanted to base an area around a sort of peril that your Cubs were in, or how did that sort of come about? If you can talk about that.
Yeah. Um, I think we basically what the levels were built dependent on what the danger uh, that the family map was going to be. So we basically what we sat pretty early with was creating what could the dangers be that the family will meet. And when we had them, we had like basically we came down with like water, fire,
Okay.
night, and so on. And based on that, I actually, because I did the mock-ups of the levels as a designer. So what I basically did then was to try to think of these dangers and then what emotions there would be involved and what I would want to the level to communicate.
Okay.
And I was based, and then I based building based it on that when I built them.
Okay.
So yeah, they are built upon the dangers.
Right.
First. So like there is a reason why the water level, for example, is going upwards a stream, because water was the main danger in the water level. So to say.
Yeah, I remember the end of the video I did. The very end ended with one of my cubs getting washed away.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big. That was sort of like the big scare for me, was just realizing that, oh hey, one of my badges is now missing.
Yeah. Was that the first you said?
What was that?
Did you lose your first cub in the
Oh,
water?
well, because I hadn't finished that for the video, I ended up having to
Okay.
leave. So it restarted me back at the beginning. So the second time through, I had made it successfully.
Yeah.
But going through, yeah, the end was definitely a really hard part. I'm assuming that it is possible to beat the game and keep all of your badges intact, like your cubs
Of
intact.
course.
Okay.
Of course, yeah.
And I mean, I've definitely thought, even just the aesthetics of the areas, like each one sort of had a almost patchworky type of art style to them, and each one had a very distinct color scheme. I thought they were
Yeah.
really fantastic. Was that sort of one of your ideas too, to sort of think of a different like color scheme, musical theme to each one, or?
The color scheme is all our art design's work.
Okay.
Jakob Tuchten. He's behind also the textural look of the game, or
Okay.
the paper cut look that some people have called it. That's all his art design, and then Peter Stråle, our artist, based every model, textured every model with these colors and textures,
Okay.
and built the world through my level design. Then. So that's how it works. So yeah, and obviously, yeah, we wanted to every level to have a different color theme.
Right.
Yeah, and also we wanted to get the feeling of that there is each level is during a different time of the day.
Right. I
was-
started to notice that at a certain point.
Mhm.
That really interested me. Like
Yeah.
overall, a lot of the different themes that they use in Shelter, I thought were all very interesting, because there's such the stark contrast between the first level, which I always consider a much calmer level. Like besides the hawk, I mean, there wasn't that much like hecticness going on. And the second one, again, it felt sort of unnerving because of its night, but there didn't seem to be that many threats. And then you go on to the river area and then the fire, and those really started to amp things up. Was that a goal? Was just to slowly
course.
just start turning things up and just sort of get you more on your toes and just more panicked about things?
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was quite important I think, to let the first level feel almost like home for the family, and that you were pretty safe, and it was all like, nice world, cute, and like try to get the player feel like relaxed, and then obviously the whole adventure starts after the first level, and you're kicked out in this wild nature, and and you have to try to survive. So yeah, but actually, to be honest with you, the order in which the levels finally turned out to be, that was always discussed. So I wouldn't say that we had everything set up from start in what order these all came.
Oh.
That was something that was developed by testing a lot as well, and seeing reactions on friends and people close.
Okay, because I mean, I sort of that was sort of the thing that made me in a way curious, because seeing the night level, I would have thought that would have been, I guess, more dangerous because of night. But I mean, it was mostly just kind of spooky in a way. But overall, I just think that the way things sort of seemed structured out seemed very interesting, both in terms of like I just said, like color, sort of danger, all of that.
Mhm.
And so I'm just kind of curious. Have you always preferred the idea of working as like an independent developer, or were you ever sort of have like dreams of being in a bigger company, or what?
Actually, a lot of us are or have actually worked for AAA games.
Oh wow.
So in that way, we are not a typical like from scratch indie studio at
Oh
all.
okay.
Some of us are. Our lead programmer, Christopher Hedborg, is straight out from school, so to speak. Yeah, he's our true indie guy. But me, myself, and Johannes, and well, Jacob, Peter, and we have all been working at AAA games earlier.
Oh wow,
So
that's interesting. I didn't know that, admittedly.
no, that's a fact actually. So that's yeah, that's a little bit that's different maybe from other indie studios, which
Yeah,
maybe
when you think of indies, you think of a couple guys working out of like their garage or their basement,
yeah, yeah.
or like
Well,
or really small teams with next to no budget, basically.
sure. Well, that might still be true for us, but but not. We do have a lot of experience, and maybe that's something that is slightly different with us compared
Okay.
to other studios, that we actually have that, and there is a reason maybe that some of us have looked for an indie environment, because maybe there were stuff in the AAA environment that we didn't enjoy that much. I
Right.
don't know.
That's sort of what I've sort of been thinking about, as because to slightly go off topic, that is sort of the path I want to go on eventually
Hmm.
of independent game development. So I've sort of hearing all these reactions from independent developers is something that always really interests me.
Hmm.
So I mean that's just very interesting to hear personally.
Hmm.
And was designing games always something you aimed towards as a career?
For me myself.
Yeah, for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that I knew straight on. It kind of grew on me from when I was around 20 years old or something. That
Okay.
okay, this is something I actually want to work with, and not only uh, play. Yeah. So
uh,
somewhere around 20, and then I went studying, and finally I got my first job in the business.
Okay. Was there a particular game that sort of wanted you that really sort of like put the light bulb on, like I really want to make games, or just in general?
Not specific game, but there was a lot happening there during the around 2000. I remember when I, PlayStation 2
Okay.
and all the games, the big hits on that console, and also PC, which and stuff really picked up there, and I started to see like lots of interesting stuff happening, and I
Okay.
just said like, oh, this is really something I want to be a
Oh.
part of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm sort of winding down. I mean, it's late over your on your end, so I only have one more question.
No
I
problem.
know you
No.
sort of said you can't say much, but if you can give it any hint at all, do you have any inklings of any concepts that you would like to put in a future game? If you can just sort of just say anything in particular, or are you just completely tied?
To be honest with you, I hardly know myself. That's a little bit how it can be in the studio. It's almost like you haven't really started to prepare for the next game until a couple of weeks after a released game. That's at least how it is at Might and Light.
Okay, so you're
So to be
still
honest with you,
focusing on
I
how
almost
Shelter is
don't know more
going.
than you do at the moment.
Okay, it's sort of still like you're just focusing on how Shelter is doing, basically.
A little bit like that, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, Andreas, I want to thank you very much again for your time.
Thanks, Dustin.
Really glad to have this interview, and I would love to. Can't wait for more work from Might and Delight in the future, basically.
I'll get in touch with you about that. We hope.
Great, thank you very much.